The taro plant. Now, some of you might be wondering, what is taro? Should I grow it? I've probably seen it at the grocery store. How does it taste? In today's video, we will see how to grow the taro plant, how to fertilize it, how to harvest it, and by the end of this episode, you will be on your way to growing great taro in your garden. Taro are of two types. One is the ornamental variety. They cannot be eaten. The other variety of taro has green stems and are edible. The corms or tubers or the roots which grow underground are edible, and the leaves are edible as well. In today's episode, we will talk about the edible taro variety. The taro plant is mostly eaten for its roots. Its roots have a nice nutty flavor. The roots are actually the corms or the tubers which grow underground, and they have a really nice taste. No part of the taro plant must be eaten raw. The leaves as well as the roots must be cooked before eating. The taro plant grows best in the ground. Growing in the ground gives the plant a lot of space to expand their tubers, and growing in containers is not a good idea. They do not grow well in containers. Now, as far as soil goes, the taro plant needs soil that is well draining, but it loves moisture. So make sure you're watering your taro plant almost on a daily basis. Here are some taro roots growing in containers, and as I mentioned, I do not recommend growing them in containers. You're going to get a lot of leaves, but the fruit production or the tuber production is very less. Taro requires a well-balanced fertilizer to start with, and as you go into the late season, usually in about 2 to 3 months, you can add extra potassium by mixing in a fertilizer like green sand. Now, green sand is an organic fertilizer rich in potassium. There are other sources of potassium as well, but I recommend using green sand. It's a very effective organic fertilizer to increase potassium content in your soil. The best way to propagate the taro plant is by getting roots from a grocery store. You can easily grow taro root plant with the roots that you get from the grocery store. However, once your plants are established, you're going to see a lot of offshoots coming out of the plant. There you can see it. This plant has a lot of offshoots. Each of these can be grown into a separate taro plant. Now, this plant was grown in a container, and as you can see, it has a lot of offshoots and a lot of leaves, but hardly any roots. That's why you should always grow taro in the ground. Taro roots usually take about 3 to 4 months to grow and produce the tubers. So if you plant in spring, you can harvest in late summer, or if you're planting in the summer, you can harvest in the fall and all the way through the early winter. So to harvest taro root, you can either use a spade or a fork. Both work equally well. And just pull the plant out like that. Now look at those tubers. Those are pretty well developed, and this plant is very, very much ready for harvest. And that's how your plant looks like when it's ready for harvest. Those are some nice tubers. So let's look at a couple of plants that were harvested. So what we're going to do is use these tubers, take them out, and then we're going to discard the tops. We don't need them now. So we're going to harvest these tubers and wash them. So that's how it looks like. So it's another day of harvest, and today we are going to use a garden fork to harvest. Let's see how that goes. So it takes about 3 to 4 months for a taro plant to grow well, establish itself, and form some nice corms or roots that you can harvest. So to harvest with the garden fork, we use the same technique, and we try to push the plant out, making sure we don't damage the tubers. And depending on how big the plant is, you might have to dig in a little deeper. And once you feel you can easily pull out the plant, just pull it out and then just shake the soil around the plants so you can see the tubers. Now as you start going through the plant roots, you're going to see a lot of tubers attached, just like that. It's a pretty big size tuber right there. So we have a few more plants to harvest, so let's get going and harvest the other plants now and keep collecting the taro root corms or tubers as we harvest. So there we have it, that's our harvest. Those are the tubers that are the most edible part of the plant. Now as I mentioned before, the leaves are also edible, but in this case that's going straight to my compost bin. But you can actually cook the leaves, they taste pretty good. So we've washed the taro roots and put it on a paper towel for drying. Once you leave it outside for about a day or so in a well ventilated area, it should cure and then store for weeks. So there we have it. Taro is easy to grow. The roots have a nice nutty flavor, and I'm sure once you try it out, you will enjoy the experience. If you're not a subscriber yet, please do subscribe to our channel, and if you like this video, do leave your comments and suggestions, and I'll see you again soon on California Gardening.